So I'm just moving to the next topic. I hope there are no doubts because I'm just erasing these things. So one, what we discussed was about the structure what we have implemented with respect to this OFDMA. So we took an example of 20 megahertz as our actual bandwidth. So this 20 megahertz, what we are doing, we are cutting down into smaller pieces, that is 15 kilohertz. So because 15 kilohertz is the smallest frequency, which we call it as subcarrier spacing, so we cannot do a transaction with so small frequency. So what are we doing? We are grouping it into 12 such subcarriers. So 12 such subcarriers in frequency domain, and 12, if you group it, it will be 15 into 12, it becomes 180 kilohertz. So in frequency domain, we have 15 into 12, that is 180 kilohertz as one grouping done. And this particular thing also we need to take care in time domain. So this was in frequency domain earlier. So now we also have to look it up in time domain. In time domain, we have something called as 7 OFDM symbols. So 7 OFDM symbols. So it becomes totally 12 into 7, totally 84 REs, resource elements. Okay, resource elements as my one resource block. Okay, one resource block. So 12 in frequency, 7 in time domain. So totally it becomes 12 into 7, 84 resource elements. So one resource block has got 84 resource elements. And if you consider one subframe, so how do we decide the subframe? So I'll just put it across here. A frame duration in LTE is 10 milliseconds. This is the frame duration. Okay. In this frame, we have 0 to 9. That is totally 10 subframe. That means the subframe duration is 1 millisecond. And this is also the TTI duration. Please remember this is very important. TTI is transmit time interval. This is the time which an E node B will be allocating every user. So it will be in terms of or in the orders of 1 millisecond itself. Right? This 1 millisecond subframe is again divided into something called as slots, which is of 0.5 millisecond. And this 0.5 millisecond is 1 RB. One more RB comes here. And this RB is nothing but 12 subcarriers. If I consider complete subframe, it will be 12 into 14, which will be 168 resource elements. Okay. Now, in this, yeah, any doubts? I can hear some voice. Okay. So now you can see that this resource block we discussed, this REs we discussed, how many REs are there we discussed, the frame duration we have discussed. So basically you can now know that one frame consists of 10 subframes, or we have 20 slots, right? And if I consider resource element, the resource element definition is one subcarrier in frequency domain, okay, in frequency domain into one OFDM symbol. So OFDM symbol is time domain. So resource element means it comes in both frequency as well as time. What about resource block? Resource block is also frequency and time, both. But when I say subcarrier, this is purely on frequency domain. So please remember this, purely on frequency domain. If I say OFDM symbol, This is purely on time domain. Okay, purely on time domain. So this is how the network has been structured, and we also discussed about the modulation schemes in LTE. So we have 64 QAM as the highest order modulation which is being used. We also have 16 QAM, and we also have QPSK. There are three modulation schemes which are adaptive in nature. There is only one. We also use BPSK for only one special case, which is called PH. I'll come to this whenever we are talking about the channel mapping. PH stands for physical hybrid indicator channel. These are the modulation schemes which we typically use for our control and data information. QPSK is 2 bits, 16 QAM is 4 bits, and 64 QAM is 6 bits. Very simple or very important. 6 bits per symbol, 4 bits per symbol, and 2 bits per symbol. So whenever we are calculating something called spectral efficiency, we need to check how much data rate we are getting for whatever modulation scheme divided by the actual carrier bandwidth. So what will be the unit? The unit will be bits per second per hertz. Okay, bits per second per hertz. So this will be the unit for spectral efficiency. And we have also calculated the spectral efficiency with one example. Let's say with 64 QAM, if we do modulation scheme, typically it will be 20 into 6, that is 120 Mbps. That will be the data rate, and the actual bandwidth is 20 megahertz. So we will get a spectral efficiency of 6. So that's how we calculate the spectral efficiency. So this is also what we had discussed yesterday. Okay, then now we have to understand. I think we have also discussed about the table what we had with respect to the bandwidth. So 1.4, 3, 5, 10, and 15. So I know that it's little difficult to remember all these sort of subcarrier spacing and the resource block. As we discussed yesterday, the subcarrier spacing for all these will be 15 kilohertz. So, sorry, I'm able to hear some voice here. Sohan, can you mute your mic? Any doubts you have? Okay. Fine. So let me continue again. So as you can see here, I'll write it down again. These are the bandwidths which are available in LTE. Correct? So these are the carrier bandwidths which are available. Subcarrier spacing for all these will be common, that is 15 kilohertz. Now the number of subcarriers, total number of subcarriers will be, here it is 1200, right? So we just reduce it here, 900, 300 you reduce. So that's how we can remember how it is. So here also 300 minus 300. Here it is 150 and here it is 72. So these are the subcarriers, total number of subcarriers which are available in each band. Let's come to resource block. The resource block here is total 100. Here it is 50. Here it is 75. Here it is 50. Here it is 25. Here it is 15. And here it is 6. So these are the number of resource block what we have got. One more important thing we have to remember, always the bandwidth what we have 20 megahertz, 10% will always be given as a guard band. Okay, 10% will always be given as a guard band. So if we consider 20 megahertz as my bandwidth, 1 megahertz on the upper side and 1 megahertz on the lower side is left as a guard period. So the total bandwidth which will be used for our actual data will be 18, sorry, not kilohertz, 18 megahertz. Okay. So I hope there are there is all some clarity with respect to all these aspects so that we can move forward. So now I just want to understand, or I just want to give you a perspective about how the allocation takes place with respect to user, because there might be I could see that there was a lot of sort of confusion, or let's say concern, that how all these stories what we discussed yesterday, ultimately how this really takes place at the site, right? That's what we have to really understand. So let's take one example so that we can understand these things better in reality, how it takes place. So we have an eNode B here. Let's say we have a mobile, which is, let's say we put it as UE number 1. I'll just change the color here. Let's say this is UE number 2. And let's say there is one more UE. And this is one more mobile. Now UE number 3, sorry. UE number 3. Now, what we have to understand here is how the allocation will take place. No matter what, typically each mobile will get not more than 1 millisecond at a time. Okay, 1 millisecond at a time. That is because the TTI duration in LTE is fixed. No matter whichever you get, you will get 1 millisecond. Now, it might be possible that at this 1 millisecond, it might be that this user, user number 3 and user number 2 might be allocated 1 millisecond at the same time. UE1 might not be allocated. Now, you might think, how is that possible that at the same time we are allocating resources to UE1 also and UE2 also? This means to say, in time domain, because whenever we are discussing about LTE, there is time as well as there is frequency. So in time domain, these two users are same. Okay, these two users are same. But in frequency domain, let's say we have 100 resource block, right? For simplicity purpose, what we try to do is, let's say here we have 50 resource block. Okay, here we have 50 resource block, and here we have 50 resource block. Okay, total 100. For I'm taking an example of 20 megahertz. So you can apply this for any other bandwidth, right? So now user 3, okay, UE3 will get this piece of cake. Okay, this piece of the actual 1 millisecond bandwidth, whatever we have, 50 resource block, and which is the other UE which we have decided here, that is UE number. So this will be taken care by UE number 2. So in time domain, both users are same, but in frequency domain, they are separated. Okay, so this is how the resource allocation takes place. And who does this? This is done by eNode B. Inside eNode B, we have something called as scheduler. In fact, this scheduler sits in a layer called as MAC layer, or we usually call it as L2 layer. Okay, so this is the entity which schedules a user based on some algorithm. Okay, this will be purely based on some algorithm, and this algorithm is not standardized. So it's very important. This algorithm is not standardized. This is up to original equipment manufacturers or the vendor, or typically whoever is implementing this. Okay, to the implementer. So implementers can implement this scheduler based on any sort of algorithm which they think that it's more sort of robust, more sort of efficient, so that they can accommodate any number of users who comes inside their network. Okay, so inside the network, any number of users come, we need to allocate. The 1 millisecond remains constant, the 100 resource block remain constant, but how many resource block do I give to each and every user purely depends on this scheduler. And the scheduler is, as I discussed, it is not having any sort of specification. It is left to vendors. They can choose any sort of algorithm to make UE allocation efficient. Okay. So how does the scheduling algorithm work? It depends on various factors. It might be that this UE might be given 50 resource block. In next instance, let's say this UE will get 1 millisecond. Okay, complete 1 millisecond of 100 resource block. This might also be possible. Let's say there will be more number of mobile users who are coming here. So now what I do, I have to schedule in such a way that, let's say, easier way of doing it is there are 5 mobiles or 6 mobiles here. Each might get 20 resource block or 10 resource block in 1 millisecond. So in time domain, even though if they are not separable, in frequency domain, they will be having a different set of resource block. So nothing but how the UE gets allocated in reality in your mobiles. So you might be wondering that if you actually see 1 millisecond, it might be a possibility that all 1 millisecond might come to this UE, or let's say 1 millisecond, after that there might be a gap of 5 millisecond, and this might get the resources. All these things are possible, and it all depends on this scheduler. Okay.
Is there any role of 3GPP? Does there any role of 3GPP in this algorithm, though it is non-standard? Does 3GPP specify something?
See, 3GPP gives some rules and regulation about scheduler algorithms. Okay, but it is how you implement is left to vendors. So it doesn't specify, it only tells how the scheduler has to work. Okay, so how does scheduler work? It depends on various examples. So I will take an example here so that you can understand things better. So I'll just, let's say I draw it again so that you understand. See, let's say typically a scheduler, what does it wants to think? Let's say this is one UE, which is here. Let's say this is the total coverage area of the E node B. Let's say one more UE is somewhere here, UE2, and let's say one more UE is somewhere in the middle. Okay, UE3. Now let's take an example. Let's say this particular user is doing a VoLTE call. VoLTE call means it is a high priority one. This particular user is, let's say, doing a WhatsApp transaction. Let's say he is uploading something on a WhatsApp or WhatsApp chat. Let me put it as WhatsApp chat. And let's say this particular user is doing a YouTube. Okay. Now, first thing is why I am taking a service, because eNode B also has to consider not only the air interface sort of parameters, it should also see what sort of services each user is accessing, because based on that also I need to prioritize the user. So maybe this requires priority 1, this will be both same priority, isn't it? So according to our quality of service, this 2 will be of priority 8, this will be priority 1. So whenever the scheduling algorithm thinks of scheduling, it might schedule first 1 millisecond to this user, and every 1 millisecond it might schedule to this user itself, because voice call cannot tolerate any delay, right? Whereas after maybe 5 millisecond gap, this user might get a resource. This user might get a resource after 2 milliseconds. So scheduler algorithm has to take what sort of services user is accessing. Second thing is, it should also take what sort of RF condition these users are in. Let's say this is in very good RF condition. Okay, so this user is in very good RF condition. So he might be getting in 1 millisecond 64 QAM as its modulation scheme, right? Whereas this user is in medium condition, maybe he might get 16 QAM as its modulation scheme. And here he might be getting QPSK as its modulation scheme. So scheduler also has to take care of something called as RF conditions. Okay. So based on RF condition, it has to do. And the very important factor it has to see is it has got only 100 resource block, let's say in 20 megahertz. So in 20 megahertz, which resource block, that is which piece in this resource block will be given to UE1, UE2, UE3 somewhere here. Okay, there might be some more UEs, it might come here. So in 1 millisecond, how do I schedule these? Also is left to the scheduler. So this purely depends on some frequency fading or frequency selectivity. So this purely scheduler has to take all these things into consideration. There is one more thing which it has to consider with respect to all these factors other than this is other than the services, other than the RF conditions, it can also has one more advantage. Let's say this is in an area where, let's say 2300 band is not being catered. This might be catered by 850 band in Jio. Okay, I'm just giving you an example because this might be 2300, this might be coverage of 1800, this might be coverage of 850. So this might be scheduled on 850 band, this might be scheduled in 1800 band, and this might be scheduled in 2300 band. So scheduler has to take care of band, bandwidth, services, what sort of services, what sort of RF condition. Based on RF condition, it has to change the modulation and coding scheme. Okay, and all these things, how does it understand? So basically, how will the eNode be understand that I am accessing WhatsApp or YouTube or VoLTE? This is given by the mobile itself. Mobile will tell the eNode B that I am doing such kind of services, give me more set of access, because eNode B will not know what sort of services the mobile is accessing. So mobile has to also send in uplink some report so that eNode B understand what sort of services and also what sort of RF condition you are in. That is given by something called as CQI, channel quality index. So whether UE is in better RF condition or let's say poor RF condition, eNode B will not be knowing this, isn't it? It will be the mobile which knows that what condition he is in, and based on that we have something called as quality index. You can see here. So the quality index here will typically say with respect to something called CQI, the channel quality index. We have a table for this also. So based on all these inputs, scheduler has to schedule this. Okay, and 3GPP as I had got a doubt here. Does 3GPP specify anything related to this? Yes, it tells that whenever scheduler wants to schedule these resources, you have to take all these parameters under consideration. But how do you sort of prioritize these sort of parameters is purely up to scheduler, which is built, which is designed by each and every vendor. So that is left to it. Okay.
Okay. One final point is, you said like UE has to publish its information to eNode so that eNode can schedule. So
correct.
Does it mean like UE will send its information every 1 millisecond because he has to schedule every 1 millisecond, right?
Okay, see, this is a very good question. See, basically, the scheduler for uplink and downlink, the authority is given to eNode B. So when should I send my report is also told by eNode B only. That time only you have to send your report in uplink direction using SCFDM. So it is not that, let's say, I want to send my report now, and it is not that I can send it immediately. I need to send it only based on the scheduler. The scheduler in eNode B will schedule not only in downlink, it also schedules in uplink also. So when you need to send your report to eNode B is also told by the eNode B itself. Mobile cannot by its own or per se can not send its report. It needs a time. That time will be given by eNode B, and that scheduled time you need to send your report. Any other doubts with respect to the scheduler or let's say the frame duration, frame subcarrier spacing?
Vignesh,
Yes.
Hariom this side. Can we serve multiple bands from same node B?
Yes, it's possible. That's what Jio is doing, right? So even BSNL, if I'm not wrong, having two bands. So from single node B, see, basically if you want to put it across, I just put it across how usually, typically the Jio network will be. See, usually you might be familiar with our tower. Usually what happens, we'll have something called as antenna here. Let's say typically we have an antenna which will support, in Geo we had an antenna which supported all three bands, 2300, 1800 and 850. This was typically called as pentaband antenna because this also supported two extra bands, which is 700 megahertz and there was I think 900 megahertz. Yeah, these are the two extra bands it supported, but Geo worked on only these three bands. So each band, for example, this particular antenna is connected to this RRH, and we had three separate RRHs here, which is 2300 band RRH, 1800 band RRH, and 850 band RRH. Each RRH was connected to antenna via this jumper cable. Typically, we had 4 jumper cables for 2300, 4 for 1800, and 2 for 850. So this signifies the number of antenna support. So this had 4 antennas, this has 4 antennas, and this had 2 antennas. And this was given to the BBU, what we call it as baseband unit. So via what we call it as CIPRI cable. So all three were radiating at the same time. Only difference was, let's say 2300 could serve somewhere around here, 1800 would have been somewhere here, and 850 coverage would have been little more extended. So let's say 2300 is here, right? Plus 1800 will also be here. So remember this, 1800 and 850, all three bands will be here. Here you will get only 1800 and 850, and here only 850 band will be supported. So scheduler also has to take care of all these things, and mobile should also know what band it supports. So this all comes under our broadcast channel. So I'll come to that whenever we are talking about the control channel aspect. But to answer to the doubt what we want to address here, yes, it can radiate all three bands at the same time.
One RRS can connect to whole
Where all three bands are available. So which band the UV will connect use means which band we will use here first?
Typically, okay, typically if you, let's say if you switch on your mobile here, you can be having any three bands, UE, an E node B. The E node B will tell that there are three bands available, but which band to latch on to, it will be again told by the E node B itself. Okay, so the moment you come here, it might be only 1800 or 850, anything. This will also be told by E node B, but mobile will be aware that there are three bands which are available, and what are the bandwidth it supports also, this will be aware through a channel called as PBCH. Okay, so I'm just jumping into these things just to make you understand. PBCH is, let's say in 2G we had something called BCCH channel, broadcast control channel. Here, similar to that, we call it as PBCH, that is physical broadcast channel, which understands what band it supports. So it only understand what band it supports, please note this, but which band I should latch on to is purely given by E node B itself. Based on E node B's inputs, it latches on to that particular sort of band. Only thing is, E node mobile in uplink direction can send a report telling that I am getting some sort of RF, poor RF condition 2300. So that feedback can be given to E node B. Now E node B can, in reply or response, can tell yes, you can move from 2300 to 1800. All these things can be done by the scheduler. So this is an ongoing process where, let's say E node B gives you a band, maybe in the next 1 millisecond you see the RF condition of this particular band is poor here, you might jump to this band, but this will also be sort of explicitly mentioned by the E node B to the UE.
So based on the coverage, in node we will decide which band we have to allocate.
Yes, based on, see, for simplicity purpose, I'm just telling the coverage. See, there might be one more chance. Let's say in 2300 here in this particular area, there might be lot of mobiles, but there might not be any mobile here. There might be two mobiles here, let's say, and there is only one mobile here. So what the UE has to also take care, sorry, eNodeB also has to take care is how many active users are there inside my coverage. So if 2300 is getting congested, now it is not a coverage issue. It is a congestion issue. So what I will do, I will push these users to 1800 or 850, even though they are in near coverage areas. Okay. So coverage is one of the aspect or one of the inputs I can, or the criteria I can say. There might be multiple other criteria which I need to take care whenever I am shifting those bands from one sort of channel to another channel or one modulation scheme to another modulation scheme.
Okay.
Okay. Any other doubts?
How many maximum users can be connected to a particular band?
So you are asking how many users can be connected to one particular band?
Yeah.
See, ideally it can be infinite. Why? Because I don't set a number here, right? I cannot set a number. But typically, what we could see in, usually what we see in eNodeB, whenever, let's say, an operator or an operator buys this eNodeB from a vendor like, let's say, Tejas or Samsung, they might ask this same question, what you asked, that what is the capacity it gives, right? So we need that number. So typically,
Because suppose there is a congestion at 850 bands. So at what time the congestion will be there? How many users will be there? So we can say that there is a congestion.
That's right. So basically 850 band, 5 megahertz. I can say that 5 megahertz if all there are, let's say, how many subcarriers are there? 300, right? So 300 subcarriers are there. If all these subcarriers are getting congested, yes, I can say that it is. But looking at this also, I cannot see the number of mobile users, because I would have in 1 millisecond I would have shifted these users from this particular area to this particular area also. So all these things are possible, but typically they say not in terms of this physical sort of measurement. Usually they say with respect to the RRC connection, and the RRC, I'm just jumping into this because RRC is the L3 protocol stack what we have got in the radio. Based on this, they say that typically we can have 600 RRC connection for one particular band. Now, to what extent this might be possible, we are not sure, because the vendor can claim any number they want, but in reality, it purely depends on whenever the user comes, the RF planning we have to do, or the scheduling algorithm we need to check. All these things matter for that, for us to understand how much capacity an eNodeB can actually accommodate. But usually they say it is 600. I'm not sure whether it can accommodate 600 users at one point of time in a single band. But it purely depends on various factors as well. Okay, any other doubt? Fine, good. So let me move to our day 3 session now. So typically, I think we have already finished with motivation towards LTE, the LTE network architecture, the network interfaces we discussed, the bearer information we discussed. We also discussed on the quality of service framework. In the radio related parameter, we purely discussed on some important initial aspects of radio. That is nothing but the multiple access technique what we use, the modulation scheme what we use, and the frame and the subcarrier and the resource block and the resource element. So these things we have discussed. Now we'll get into a little deeper aspect inside the radio frame, talking about how the synchronization and takes place, and also looking at what is the difference between the FDD frame and TDD frame. This is very important to understand because the FDD frame is different and the TDD frame structure is different. When I say the frame structure is different, it doesn't mean that they are having a different frame duration. The frame duration is 10 millisecond. The subframe duration is 1 millisecond. The slot duration is 0.5. All this remains same. There are other changes with respect to the downlink and uplink. We'll come to that. So that's what we'll be discussing in this frequency domain organization, what we have. See here, we'll start with frequency domain architecture or organization. The TDD frame structure in LTE. The TDD uplink and downlink configuration, very important aspect. The modulation and coding scheme. What do you mean by CQI table? This particular thing I think will not be covering today, we'll cover tomorrow, because this is where the SINR, the signal to interference and noise ratio, will be covering tomorrow. So I have included table in day 4. So I've just put it here, sorry for that. So, we will be covering CQI table, what is CQI, what is CQI table. Very important thing is just to know how this data rate will be achieved. See, everybody talks about 300 Mbps or let's say 100 Mbps. All these things we'll discuss with respect to what sort of other factors which are affecting our throughput. Let's say MIMO, we have not discussed this yesterday. We already know that MIMO will always increase your throughput. How is it increasing throughput? Always does it increase your throughput or not? All these things we are going to discuss here, and then we'll summarize. So I think everybody are familiar now with this particular sort of frequency domain organization. Already everyone are familiar with 15 kHz. So how it's divided or pushed into 180 kilohertz. I hope everyone are familiar with this. So I'll just move forward. Yes. So this is about the time domain structure, what we have got in FDD, right? The frequency, sorry. This is not, this is in FDD. So the time domain structure, we already know about this. This is about the FDD. So please remember this, TDD will come later. So what we discussed earlier, yesterday, was about how many subframes you have got, that is 10, right? So in this one subframe, we have 2 slots, right? And in each slot, we have 7 OFDM symbols. So just minimizing this, have they mentioned here 7 or yeah? So one slot, it has got 7 OFDM symbols. 7 OFDM symbol, and one OFDM symbol, how much is it? 66.6 microsecond. And what is the duration of this? I think I had given this assignment yesterday. Has anyone found it out? How much is the duration of this cyclic prefix? We understood what is cyclic prefix yesterday, right? Cyclic prefix is added to counter IASI in time domain. So we are just repeating this particular data and putting it across here, right? What was the cyclic prefix duration? Does anyone remember this?
6 microseconds. 4.7 microseconds.
Fantastic. So 4.7 microsecond. There is also one more cyclic prefix duration. That is, the first cyclic prefix duration is 5.2 microsecond, and rest all, that is CP2 to CP13, all are having a duration of 4.7 microsecond. So anyone who got a solution why we are going with 5.2 earlier and then we are going with 4.7?
Because the samples, others having 144 and this one having 160 samples.
Okay, so that's correct. So one thing is that, so because of, as pointed out, there are more number of samples which are required. Why? Because whenever the mobile is clamping on, what we call it as, whenever the mobile is powering on and camping with this particular E node B, first time it should have some cushion factor or extra factor to accommodate this cyclic prefix. So that's why we are giving some more time to get that sort of delay spread. The delay what is there to accommodate that to UE, we are giving a much larger the cyclic prefix 1 duration, and the rest duration it will try to catch up. So that's why they have stuck to 4.7 microseconds. Okay, so that's the cyclic prefix duration. Remember this cyclic prefix what we mentioned is called as normal cyclic prefix. Okay, the normal cyclic prefix duration is 4.7 microsecond. I'm just putting it as 4.7 because most of the time it is 4.7, and it will have 7 OFDM symbols, right? There are two other variants of cyclic prefix. One more is extended cyclic prefix. Here the duration is 16.6 microsecond. Okay, and we will not have 7 OFDM symbols. We will have only 6 OFDM symbols. Okay, 6 OFDM symbols. And there is one more type of cyclic prefix which is called MBSFN. MB stands for multimedia broadcast single frame number. This has a cyclic prefix duration of 33.3 microsecond, and this will have a total OFDM symbol of 3. Only 3 OFDM symbols are available. Now, in our discussion, we will be discussing only this particular cyclic prefix. These we are not discussing because we are not doing any sort of implementation. In case if you require any sort of information, I can extend that. But our discussion will be limited towards only the normal cyclic prefix. Okay. Okay. Now, the next important factor, what you can see here, there is something called PSS, SSS, and PVCH. Okay. Now, these positions in LTE FDD frame is already fixed. Now, we have to understand what does this mean. PSS means, I'll first mention the full form. It is called primary synchronization sequence. Okay, or we also call it as signal. Primary synchronization signal. SSS means secondary synchronization signal. Okay, and what do you mean by PBCH? PBCH is physical broadcast channel. Okay. Now, whenever we switch on our mobile, the first thing is it has to do the initial connection. That means it has to do the initial acquisition of the network. That means it should know the profile of the network, isn't it? So what it has to do, it has to synchronize with the E node B. The first thing it will do is it has to synchronize with E node B. To synchronize with E node B, we have these two signals, which is called PSS and SSS. PSS means what? PSS, to understand this, I think so whether the positions have been mentioned. I'm just checking here. Okay, it's not there. I'll come to this. Now, how does this PSS and SSS comes? I will just take a whiteboard and write it here. So if we consider, let's say 7 OFDM symbols, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, this is the first slot what we get, correct? 0.5 millisecond slot. Okay. And similarly we'll have one more 0.5 millisecond. So this will be our subframe number 1, correct? PSS will always come here, where in the first slot in the 7th subframe. Okay, this is 7th one. Okay, 0 to 6, this is 7th one. So, or we can also tell it as in the.
भाई क्या हो गया आपको, क्यों कॉल कर रहे हो आप?
I have to write it down again.
क्या?
Okay, this is the last OFDM symbol. This is where PSS comes.
108 आपका नंबर है.
Okay, SSS comes here.
ये बताओ 108 आपका नंबर है ये.
Okay, last but one. That means penultimate symbol of the first slot of the subtree.
76588
Okay,
52108 आपका नंबर है ये.
So let's say this is one more slot, right?
हेलो.
So I will write it as
मैं बोल रहा हूँ
8,
76588.
9, 10, 11.
तो मैं क्या
12,
करूँ, मैं कौन सा आपको
13,
कॉल कर रहा हूँ?
right? Now this next 4 OFDM symbols.
मेरे साथ में और भी लोग बैठे हैं, मैंने एक भी कॉल नहीं की है.
We get
एक नंबर और से आ रही है बार-बार कॉल.
Why I am telling this? Because whenever the mobile
एक
switch
बार
is
भी
on,
मैंने कॉल
it
ना
will
बैक किया है ना
start
मैंने कॉल
checking the
की है.
slot duration. It will start scanning and it will come here.
भाई मैंने
It will
नहीं
understand
किया,
PSS. Whenever it decodes PSS, it will know the slot boundary. See, this is the slot boundary, right?
बोल कहाँ से रहे हो आप?
So PSS will always help a mobile in understanding the slot boundary. Okay? Fine. Is it clear? Now SSS, it would have, once you decode PSS, it will start decoding SSS. Now SSS will give you the frame synchronization. How? I'll come to this whenever we are going through the frame. Just remember this. Whenever you are switching on your mobile, you have to synchronize the mobile with the E0B. So you should know the frame duration, right? So PSS will give you slot boundary and it will do the slot synchronization. SSS will give you the frame, or actually it is not frame, it is subframe synchronization. Okay? And now, once you know this, you have synchronized with BTS. Now you should know something called as cell ID. Cell ID. Every cell will have an ID. We call that ID as PC ID. Maybe people who would have worked in RF might have seen this parameter, which is called as physical cell ID. Now, people who have already worked on looking at these log files of UE, typically what is the PCI value you get? Any idea? Okay, the PCI value in LTE is also defined by the standards. It starts with 0 and ends at 503. So totally in LTE we can have 504 PCI value. Please note this, because this might be very helpful in your looking at the log files. PCI value will be within 504, within 503. So total it is 504. Okay. Now how do you get this cell ID? PSS will have, typically you know that E0B is divided into 3 sectors, right? Typically most of the sites will be 3 sectors only. You will have very hardly 4 or 6 sectors, but generally we go with 3 sectors. So that's why PSS value will be 0, 1 or 2. So while decoding PSS, you will get the sector ID first, okay? Or we call it as cell group number. Okay, cell group number. The SSS will have something called as group ID. Okay, the SSS will have something called as group ID. Group ID will be from 0 to 167. That is totally 168. Now you do the multiplication. 168 into 3, it will be 504 PCI. Okay. So PSS and SSS will help a mobile in doing the synchronization with the E0B. That is nothing but it will know the slot, subframe, and also the PCI value.
मैं नंबर दे देना
Any
थाने
doubts
में
in
वैसे
this?
बोलना तेरा अब
So every slot will carry this information.
हेलो
Okay, that's a very good question. That's what I
वो कार्ड वाले
didn't
तो
tell
नहीं हो
that.
रखे तुम
I
लोग
come to
सुबह से
that. So,
दूसरा नंबर है
so
ये
I
मेरे
just
को
jump
जो
to the
कॉल
slide
आ
so
रही है
that you
बार
can
बार
understand where this PSS and SSS comes. Just look it carefully where PSS and SSS is coming. Just see this. PSS is coming in where? In the 0th subframe and 5th subframe. That's all. Okay. In a frame, remember this, in a frame, PSS comes in 0th
नौ
subframe
बार कर बैठी
and which
कॉल
subframe? 5th subframe. That's all. So it comes 2 times in a frame. Remember this, PSS and SSS comes 2 times in a frame. And remember, this is talking about only in FDD. In TDD, it will be different. Okay. Remember, this configuration, what I'm talking about is purely on FDD. In TDD, this PSS and SSS slots or the positions will be different. Okay. This will be purely in FDD only. Am I clear with this?
Yes.
Okay. Now, we have spoken only on the time domain. What about in frequency domain? See, always LTE, we should also stop. This is in time domain. What about in frequency domain? In frequency domain, it will occupy the middle 62 subcarriers, or in bracket we call it as 6 resource block. I'll come to this why it is done like this. If you know the answer, you can let me know, or else I'll come to this. I just want to finish this PBCH and I'll come to it. Okay. So now, the moment you decode PSS and SSS, here also PSS and SSS, a mobile will get synchronized. So I'll just erase this. So first thing is, mobile will decode this, and it will get synchronized with the E node B. Okay. It will get synchronized with the E node B. Now the next thing what E node B requires is some critical information with respect to the network, so that mobile gets into idle mode, quickly gets into idle mode. That's very important, right? So if you have known about 2G, in 2G we had something called as BCCH channel, which used to broadcast something called as system information. Okay? System information, SI. It used to be called as SI. Similarly, in those lines only, we are having something called as PBCH. But PBCH will not give you broadcast information. It will give something called as MIB, MIB information. Because the system information in LTE is divided into 2 different categories. One is called MIB, one is called SIB. Now, SIB, we don't get it in PBCH, okay? Only MIB gets into PBCH. MIB stands for Master Information Block, okay? Master Information Block. And SIB stands for System Information Block. We have these slides, subsequently we have these slides. So don't worry, we have all the full forms, all this data is available. We have the MIB and SIB table also. But just to make you understand about PBCH, I'm mentioning this, okay? Now, forget about SIB, I'll come to this little later. Let's concentrate on MIB. MIB means the critical information which requires for mobile to get into idle mode. So what are those information? First thing what I require is the system bandwidth. Okay, the system bandwidth. Very important is the system bandwidth. The next thing is the number of antenna support. Okay, the number of antenna it supports. Third thing is it should know the system frame number. It is not subframe number. This is called as system frame number. Okay, the system frame number. All this information is part of MIF. And once the mobile receives this information, there is one more information. I forgot, I'll just mention it here. One more information is PH configuration. So there are actually 4 important data which gets flowed inside PBCH. The system bandwidth, the number of antenna support, the system frame number, and the PH configuration. PH stands for, as I discussed earlier, physical hybrid indicator channel. So I'll come to this. What does this mean? Just remember that this also comes in MIF. Now, how many OFDM symbols it is taking? It is taking 4 OFDM symbols. Remember this, it is taking 4 OFDM symbol, and it comes only once in a frame. It comes only once in a frame. Okay, and where is it positioned? I think I had drawn that as here also. In the 6th slot, you get PSS. In the 5th slot, we get SSS. In the next slot, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, right? This is slot number 1 and this is slot number 2. In slot number 2, these 4 OFDM symbols are occupied by PBCH. Okay? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 0. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, 7 here. Sorry, this is also 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, this is slot 1 and this is slot 2. Now, as I discussed, this is in time domain only, right? This is in time domain. What about in frequency domain? You should also understand frequency domain. In frequency domain, PBCH, PSS and SSS occupies, remember this, PSS and SSS occupies 62 subcarriers, and PBCH occupies 72 subcarriers. That is, if you consider in terms of resource block, it is 6 resource blocks. Okay. Now, why is this 6 resource block? For the simple reason that in our LTE system, any doubts you have got? I could see someone unmuting.
Does UE require 6 resource blocks to get this information?
No, this is all predefined. UE doesn't request. Already these are predefined according to the 3GPP specifications only. So UE already knows that. In the 6th subframe, 6th slot and 5th slot, we are having PSS and SSS in time domain, and 0, 1, 2, 3. These are PBCH. This is all fixed according to the 3GPP specification itself. It need not ask for this. Okay, and basically these are broadcast channels. Okay, this will be broadcasted even though if you switch on, switch off, whether you are synchronized or not, this will be broadcasted in every frame. Is it clear?
Yeah, you said the 6 RB, right? So 6
Correct.
RBs are required. I mean, these 6 RBs will be broadcasted to, allocated to all the UEs kind of thing.
Correct. See, basically, why 6 RBs? I am coming to that only. I'll just erase this so that. See, what is the total bandwidth what we have got in LTE? What is the maximum bandwidth? I am talking about only now frequency domain, right? Time domain I have already finished, so I don't want to get into that. 20 megahertz is the actual bandwidth, correct? Now let's say this is the middle where we are considering. On top we have 20 megahertz, on bottom we have 20 megahertz. Let's take this example. Let's say this is the center frequency. From here I am calculating. Now, whenever the mobile wants to switch on the mobile, whenever the mobile switches on, I don't know as a network has 1.4 or 3 or 5 or 10 or 15 or 20, right? So as a mobile user, we don't know which bandwidth a new node B is radiating. So what mobile will do is, mobile will check the center frequency. From the center frequency, the first 6 resource blocks. Okay, the first 6 resource block. Why only 6? Because the lowest bandwidth what we have is 1.4. It has got 6 resource block. So there might be there is not less than 1.4, right? So a mobile knows that first I need to do is, from the center, the first 6 resource block, I need to tune to this resource blocks only, so that we will get PSS, SSS and PBCH. That is why the PSS, SSS and PBCH comes within this first central 6 resource block itself, because mobile can be having 1.4 or 3, 5, 10, 15, 20, anything is possible. That's why the frequency domain is fixed for 6 resource blocks. I hope you got this point. Any doubts in this?
Yes.
Okay. Once we know PBCH, now we understand that there is 20 megahertz bandwidth also. Now it will scan all 20 megahertz. So initially it will scan only these 6 resource block, then it will go to all other different bandwidths based on whatever scheduling it has. Any doubts in this? Okay, I will just move forward. TDD. Okay. Yes. Any doubts in the FDD frame structure of time domain? No. Okay. It's 5:15 now. We'll have a 10 minutes break. So we'll start at 5:25. Okay. 17:25 will start. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So now
नहीं वो कंपनी
let's
है
move to TDD frame
नहीं होगा
structure.
जी नई टेक्नोलॉजी आती है
Let's move to TDD frame structure. So if you look at it, the frame duration remains same,
कंपनी
the subframe duration remains same, the slot duration also remains same. Only thing is, remember this, we have something called special subframe. Okay, special subframe, which has something called as EWPTS, GP and UPPTS. Okay, this is one of the differences. How it is configured, I'll come to the next slide so that you understand things better. This special subframe DWPTS stands for downlink pilot time slot. So this is where what we had PSS and SSS. This is where we get PSS. In DWPTS we get PSS here. So the position, I'll come to that when how we will get the position. GP is guard period. Why are we using this? We are typically using this to help avoid interference between the uplink and downlink. Okay, and provide the transceiver adequate time to switch from transmitter function to receiver function and vice versa. So remember, this TDD means in this particular frame only we are using it for downlink as well as uplink. Okay, UPPTS is nothing but uplink pilot time slot, facilitates uplink synchronization. Now just give you an idea how the configuration has been done in TDD frame. So I think this has already been covered. I'll just skip to the main part here. Okay, you can see here what are the different sort of configurations what we have got. I'll come to this slide little later. We'll just discuss this first. See, you can see here we have totally 0 to 9. That is 10 subframe, right, in a frame. Now, LTE standard says that according to 3GPP specification, totally we have 7 different configurations in TDD. Okay, how many configurations are there? 7. Okay. It also specifies in which subframe what sort of transaction will take place. See here, D means downlink, U means uplink, S means special subframe. So we also looked at how the special subframe looks. You can see here how the special subframe is. Why it is being there, I'll come to this. But just understand how it is being structured here. Next point. See here, in all configuration, it will always start with downlink. Okay? Very important to understand. You take any configuration in LTE. So any configuration, it will start with downlink itself. Okay? If you want to switch from downlink to uplink, always it has to be presided over by a special subframe. This is the second point you have to remember. So I can hear some voice. Can you mute your mic? Not understand. Is that? Okay. I'll come to the discussion. So remember this first point is always it starts with downlink. Second point is whenever we are switching from downlink to uplink, okay? Whenever we are switching from downlink to uplink, it has to be presided over by a special subframe. But if you are switching from uplink to downlink, you don't require a special subframe. So I'll repeat it again. Always the first frame will be downlink itself, first subframe. Okay, always the first subframe. If you are switching from downlink to uplink, because this is TDD, in single frequency we need to switch between downlink and uplink, right? So it has to be, there should be a special subframe in between this downlink and uplink. But if we are moving from uplink to downlink, we don't require a special subframe. Okay, we don't require a special subframe.
बेकार है यार.
So you can see here, you can clearly see here, whenever there is a switch between downlink and uplink, again there is a special subframe. Okay. Next important point. The periodicity can be of 5 milliseconds. See here. Or it can be 10 milliseconds. How do I understand? In 5 millisecond periodicity, you get 2 times special subframe. That means it is a 5 millisecond periodicity. In 10 millisecond periodicity, you get only 1 special subframe. You can see here, there are no special subframe available. Okay. So, implementation point of view, I have seen in Geo, they were using.
Excuse me, can you just repeat it? Period 10 millisecond. One second.
Just a second. See, we remember that this is 10 millisecond subframe, right? This is all 10 millisecond subframe, so 10 millisecond frame only. Now, 5 millisecond periodicity means, you can see here this 5 millisecond periodicity means, typically we'll have 2 special subframes. You can see here. But if you have a 10 millisecond periodicity means repetition, you will have only 1 special subframe. That's all. There is no other special subframe available. You can see here. The last one is again, you can see 2 special subframes are there. If 5 millisecond periodicity means you will get 2 times special subframe. in a frame, very important. A 10 millisecond periodicity means you get only one special subframe in a frame. Okay. I hope it's clear now. Any doubts in this? Okay. And remember few other points. Always it starts with downlink. Whenever we are switching from downlink to uplink, we require a special subframe. But whenever we are switching from uplink to downlink, we don't require a special subframe. Okay. And remember one more point. Totally we have 0 to 6, 7 TDD configurations available in LTE. 7 different configurations. So an operator has freedom to choose any of these 7. So typically what I had seen in Jio was initially they had gone with this particular configuration. In the initial state they had gone with this particular configuration. Later on they also went with this particular configuration. Okay. So if we go with this particular configuration, you can see here out of 10, because 10 subframes are there, 1 is special subframe, 1 is for uplink, rest 8 is for downlink. So 8 slots, 8 millisecond was for downlink, 1 millisecond was for uplink, 1 millisecond was for special subframe. This is the configuration initially was used in Jio. Then they moved towards configuration number 2. If you look at configuration number 2, in config 2, you can see here in config 2, typically we can see 2 uplink, that means 2 millisecond for uplink, 2 special subframe, that means 2 millisecond for special subframe, and how much will be restored? 6 downlink, that is 6 milliseconds for downlink. So this is purely up to an operator what configuration he has to go, but he has to, the operator has to choose between either of these 7 uplink downlink configurations.
Yes, map panel.
Now next,
Vignesh,
yes.
on what basis this period is defined, like 5 milliseconds or 10 milliseconds? These are interchangeable. In configuration 0 or 1, we can take 10 milliseconds also.
No. The configuration 012 is always having a periodicity of 5 milliseconds. That means just for better management purpose, they have given 2 options, wherein a 5 millisecond periodicity can have 2 special subframes, whereas in 10 millisecond I don't require that because I am giving more of download. See, 10 millisecond is talking about more of download, less of upload, whereas 5 millisecond periodicity is giving opportunity in both the sets. Okay, that's the intention. But we cannot change, let's say 0 configuration cannot be a 10 millisecond periodicity. It's already kind of well defined in the standards. Okay, so this periodicity, the downlink slot, the uplink slot, where the special subframe comes, everything, once we do the configuration, we can change the configuration. See, let's say an operator chooses configuration number 5, tomorrow he can go to configuration 0. That can be sort of configured using in your software or whatever upgrade you want to do, you can do that. But inside the configuration, whatever slots have been assigned, it is all predefined by the standard system. Okay, now let's look at the PSS and SSS positions. Okay, you can see the PSS and SSS positions here in TDD. Okay, so remember this is in TDD. In FDD, I just repeated here. In FDD, where was the PSS and SSS? PSS and SSS came twice in a frame, Okay, came twice in a frame. PSS came in 6th symbol of first slot. Okay, PSS came in 6th symbol in first slot, that is last symbol. And just before this, the penultimate one had SSS. And subsequently after this, we had next 4 OFDM symbols on PBCH, right? This was the structure in FDD. Now, what about in TDD? In TDD, you can see here, PSS is coming somewhere here, where in the first subframe, okay, in the first subframe, we are getting PSS. SSS, you can see here, SSS is actually coming in the last slot, that is the 14th OFDM symbol. Okay, the 14th OFDM symbol of the first frame, first subframe, sorry, not frame, first subframe. And PBCH also comes in the same sort of frame, just one gap, and then we are getting PBCH. Okay, so PBCH comes here, PSS and SSS comes here, and again you can see here, PSS comes here, SSS comes here. So here also you can see PSS and SSS comes twice, but the difference is the PSS and SSS are not adjacent to each other. PSS comes in frame number, subframe number 1, SSS comes in subframe number 0. Again, PSS comes in subframe number 6, SSS comes in subframe number 5. So they are not next to each other. With this, a mobile can conclude that if it is not next to each other, that means it is TDD. If it is next to each other, adjacent to each other, then it is FDD. Okay? That's why the positions of PSS and SSS and PBCH have been changed in TDD and FDD, so that a mobile can clearly understand in which sort of configuration the particular mobile has latched on. Okay? So the synchronization in FDD is different, synchronization in TDD is different. And the PBCH also will be here. The frequency domain will be same. It will be 6 resource block only. This there is no change. Okay, there is no change. Only in the positions of PSS and SSS and PBCH, there is a change because mobile can understand which is TDD and which is FDD. Fine. Now, the next important point we have to remember here is why we require this special subframe and what is the impact of this special subframe. Because of this special subframe, obviously our data rate will reduce. Data rate will reduce in TDD when compared to FDD, because one slot is already gone for doing some sort of channel estimation. When compared to in FDD, all 10 subframes were used for uplink or all 10 subframes were used for downlink. But here there is one special subframe which is being used because while switching from downlink to uplink, we need to have this special subframe because there is some delay which needs to be taken care whenever the mobiles are switching from downlink to uplink. Okay, so now let's look at this special subframe in depth. You can see here, we already saw what this special subframe is. It consists of something called downlink pilot time slot, guard period, and uplink time slot. Okay. Now we'll see what are the different sort of configurations which are available in special subframe and how it will impact. So you can see here, totally the special subframe has 9 different configurations which are available in TDD. So in TDD, we have 0 to 6 total configuration, and the special subframe in TDD has totally 0 to 8 9 configurations which are available. So whenever we are configuring our TDD technology, we should specify this configuration also and also this configuration. So let's look at this configuration. You can see here, totally in a frame we have 14 OFDM symbols, right? These 14 OFDM symbols, how they have divided, you can see here. In configuration 0, 3 is given to downlink, 10 is given to uplink, 10 is given to guard period, and 1 is given to uplink. So you can see how they have mix and match these kind of configuration. You can see the guard period here has been given more. Here the guard period is given less. How it will impact, you can see here, it will impact on the coverage. You can see the cell radius, if you give more guard period, the cell coverage can be increased. And please note this is one of the parameters a configuration can be considered for coverage. There are other parameters also. For example, power will also have an impact on coverage. They'll also have RACs, that is random access channel, impact on coverage. They'll also have, let's say, the scheduling which is impacting on coverage. It will also have frequency which is impacting on coverage. And one more important input is the special subframe guard period. If allocate more levels for guard period, your cell radius increase. Okay, with this guard period, the cell radius what we get is 107 kilometer. See, whenever we say 107 kilometer, don't think that it is complete 107 kilometer. It is the propagation path. See, let's say this particular node will typically in, let's say, geo will cover 2 kilometers. Okay, let's say it is 2 kilometers. And for simplicity purpose, I'm doing this. What this cell radius or round trip distance it is calculating is, let's say it goes like this, comes like this, because of multiple reflections. Here only it can be somewhere around 10 kilometers. So the propagation path is different. This is not a straight path. A straight path means you could have got a lot bigger cell radius, right? This cell radius, what we are talking about, is purely because of the multi-path reflections which takes place inside the cell, and that distance is total distance of 107 kilometers. Okay, the round trip is 214. If you consider one way, it's 107. So if you take more symbols for guard period, you can increase the curve in TD. And if you take, let's say, less guard period, you can reduce the coverage of LTE, and you can use those more number of bits for downlink. So downlink pirate symbols will be more, guard period will be less. So what impact it will take? It will have an impact on your cell coverage. So one of the factors which improves or which can be improved, or let's say increase of cell coverage, can be done through this special subset.
ये वही है वो गोपा जो शुरू में मारा था.
If you want an example, I think in Geo they were initially going with for they have gone with this particular configuration 5. Okay, and then they move to configuration 7. So this is also left to operators. They can change the configuration, but these bits and whatever symbols are for each configuration remains constant. Okay. Any doubts in this special subframe configuration which impacts the cell size?
What is the internal reason for increasing coverage when access is more?
Can you please repeat it? What is the reason for?
Increasing the cell coverage when guard period is more. Reason?
See, basically in TDD, especially in TDD, what happens is, because we have to switch between downlink and uplink, it will have some delay. This delay also we need to take care while taking a coverage plan, especially for TDD. This will not have an effect on FDD because in FDD it is a different frequency for uplink and downlink, right? When we are switching from downlink to uplink or uplink to downlink, uplink to downlink doesn't matter because it is taken care by E node B. Especially this part, we need to take care of this delay, and this delay has to be taken care inside the cell because it will impact our coverage, right? That is why this special subframe has been given some flexibility with respect to this guard period, whereas an operator can choose whether if he wants bigger cell coverage or let's say he sees that there is a lot of delay, he can go with more number of guard period symbols, or if he sees that there are no delay issues with respect to that, he can go with less number of guard periods. So basically, what I mean to say is, in our cellular network, basically we have this E node B, which we call it as macro E node B. Now this coverage spreading across for let's say 2 to 3 kilometers or let's say 4 kilometers also, we might go a little more guard period symbols, let's say 10 or let's say 4 or something like that. But let's say we need to give coverage inside a building, we usually go with something called small cells. Okay, for this guard period is sufficient enough, and we can utilize those rest of the symbols for downlink, so that it will increase your throughput. So there is always a trade-off. Whenever you allocate more guard period symbols, your throughput will also reduce in TDD. But we need to do this because TDD's intrinsic behavior is, whenever we are switching from downlink to uplink, there is an intrinsic encounter throughout the system. Is it clear? Any other doubts you have got? So we have to take this into consideration. There is always a trade-off. We need to compromise on something like data rate on this. All these things are sort of in TDD, but according to the specification, they have given all these sort of options only because it is all implementers, whether you want a bigger coverage, a smaller coverage, there is a delay between all these users. Taking all this into consideration, we can choose the guard period and the downlink pilot time slot so that we can compensate this and get those trade-offs. Okay, any other doubt? I think downlink also, we have already covered this. Yes, the downlink and uplink is covered. So just to summarize whatever we discussed in time domain organization, you can see here 10 millisecond, subframe is 1 millisecond, slot is 0.5 millisecond, symbol duration. You can see here the symbol duration, OFDM symbol duration, it is 4.16 microsecond what we have got for normal cyclic prefix with 7 OFDM symbols. If we go for extended cyclic prefix, we get 6 OFDM symbols with 16.66 microsecond as the cyclic prefix duration. And if we go with something called MBSFM, which is multimedia broadcast single frequency network, for this we go with 3 OFDM symbols with a cyclic prefix duration of 33.3 microsecond. And radio frame structure for FTD is different and TDD is different. As we can see, FTD has a different or separate downlink and uplink. TDD has a single frequency which is distributed in different time domains. In FTD, as we discussed, we looked at the slot positions ESS and SSS for synchronization. We could see that it is always at the last OFDM symbol of the first slot ESS and penultimate OFDM symbols for the SSS. And TBCH follows with this with the 4 OFDM symbols, and it takes how many subcarriers, or let's say 6 resource blocks. In TDD, what we have to remember is the TDD configuration always has 0 to 6, totally 7 configurations available. In this, we have a thing called special subframe to do a downlink to uplink switching. This special subframe again has 0 to 8, totally 9 configuration available. So an operator can choose between these 7 configuration and 9 configuration to sort of do based on the cell coverage, based on the asymmetricity of those service, based on various other factors. It can choose these TDD configuration and the special subframe configuration. And always remember, here also the PSS and TBCH positions are different from what we have got in LTE. Okay, so the next thing is about the modulation coding schemes what we have got in LTE. We already know now that we have either 2 bits. What modulation scheme is this? This is QPSK. 4 bits. What is this modulation scheme called? 16 QAM. And 6 bits. 64 QAM. Okay. Basically, these things are as of now not used in our implementation point of view. 8 bits are also there. 8 bits means how much will be this? 256 QAM. Okay. So LTE Advanced is having 256 QAM, but as of now we are going with only PSK 16 QAM and 64 QAM. Okay. Now this MCS, we have totally 31 MCS schemes. Okay. In this we are using only till somewhere around 19. Okay. Only till 19, which also has something called TBS. TBS means transport block size. Okay. This is purely the size which is being taken care by the MAC layer of L2 layer in eNode B. As to this index, how it is being done whenever we are looking at CQI. But just to understand that in the MCS index in LTE, actually they have given some 31 options, but we can use only till 19 somewhere. These things are already there in MCS schemes, but typically in implementation point of view, we will not be using it. Whenever the 256 QAM comes into picture, we might get into those things as well. Now, this different with respect to what we have got with respect to modulation coding schemes. So you can see here, every CQI value has a corresponding MCS schemes here, right? So it has all the MCS schemes here. But now you have to remember what does the CQI mean? So basically what it means is eNode B, whenever it is doing the channel scheduling, mobile has to send something called as, one of the parameters it sends is CQI. There are other 2 parameters also. I just put it across here so that later on you might see these parameters, but we might not discuss this much in detail because this is purely on the antenna side. CQI stands for channel quality index. RI stands for rank indicator. PMI stands for pre-coding matrix indicator. Okay. Now, this a little bit briefly I will mention what this is. First, we'll concentrate on CQI. Whenever eNode is sending the data, let's say the mobile will power on, it will read PSS. Reading PSS, there is something called as RS, reference signal. I think yesterday we discussed this reference signal also. Reference signal we understood that reference signal positions are also fixed in looking at the reference signal. A network can do something called as channel estimation. Okay, channel estimation means it will know RF conditions looking at this reference signal. Then it will go to PSS, then it will do the SSS, then it will read PBCH. Once it reads PBCH, it is going idle mode. Right? Once it comes to idle mode, now it will start measuring whatever E node B is sending that, and it will make some sort of calculation saying that, okay, whether I am in good RF condition or poor RF condition. For every RF condition, there is a CQI value, channel quality index value. That index value is the one which they have mentioned in this table. For example, if my CQI value is 1, that means the network understands that I need to send QPSK modulation with a code rate of 0.10149. Now I'll come to this. What does this mean? Remember, I'll take one more example. Let's say mobile sends a value of 9. That means the network understands that, E-node understands that a mobile will be able to handle 4 bits and with a coding rate of 0.563. Now I think you clearly understand this particular part, right? This particular part is understood. But what about this particular part? I will come to this. Basically, I take this example. Let's say mobile sends a value of 9 to E node B. What will E node B do in downlink direction? It will do 16 ohm modulation, but the condition is out of 4 bits, 0.5 means what? 2 bits it will do the coding. Code means what? Coding is done for mainly for the security inside air medium. We need to do some security measures so that it will actually protect my actual bits. It is like this, just to make you understand for a simpler reason. For simplicity, for what I can say is, let's say you need a letter from, let's say, place A to place B. Now you will not send this letter directly, right? You put it under an envelope. Now this envelope is like a code, or let's say it is a cover to actually protect your actual bits, right? This is called coded bits, and this is called your actual data. Right? So the more you put protection, the more it will get protected, and you will get the actual data at the receiver. So from E node B, let's say we need to send a mobile some data. Let's say 100 bits I need to send. Okay. What does it say? The CQI value says that means out of 100 bits, I can send only 50 bits of my actual data and 50 bits of my protection of coded bits. That is because the value of 9 what does it indicate? Out of whatever bits we have, 50% needs to be secured. 50% you can use it for your actual data. Okay? So this is what it means with respect to the coded bits. So whenever we are sending a CQI value, our network will understand what number it needs to take care, and in those bits, how many bits need to be allocated for. Okay? So similar to that, let's say we have bits. In 6 bits, 0.8 bits means what? Almost out of 6 bits, 5 bits can be used for data, only 1 bit can be used for security or code. That means your actual throughput will be very high here when compared to this. So always remember, whenever we are calculating the data rate, just by simply looking at 64 QAM, we cannot say that the data rate has been improved. In 64 QAM, we have very to these coded bits, right? Now remember, in 6 bits, only 3 bits can be, let's say if I take the configuration 11, CQI number 11, out of 6 bits, only I can use 4 bits for actual data, 6 bits for, let's say, sorry, we have only 6 bits, right? Out of 6 bits, maybe 2 bits for actual data and 4 bits for security or code. Okay, so this value we need to take care when in the modulation coding scheme. We not only have to take care of the bits. Out of these bits, how effectively we are using it for data and how much we are using it for security. This also will be taken care of the CQI value.
This 0.68 4 bits.
60% of
60% of 6.
correct. 60% of 60% will be used. Correct. No, not 60%. 60% will be for actual bits. 0.4 will be for the remaining will be coded bits.
Then it should be data rate, not code rate.
Okay. Typically, we can call it as data rate. Correct. Okay. Now, typically this MCS mapping, we looked at the table. No, the same table has been carried forward here. MCS and the corresponding transport block size. And we have taken an example only for resource block of 20. That means only somewhere around for 20 with respect to that resource block we have taken here. But other also will have the same CQI condition. And all these will be sort of well defined and predefined in the GPP specification. Okay, so you can see here with respect to what we were talking about before release 12, you can see the release 12 categorizations here, right? So you can see the you can better hear itself. Let's say in 4 bits, you can see here 0.6 is being utilized for code and 2.4 is utilized for your actual bits in the RE for data. Okay, remaining will be overhead information. For example, the reference signal will be there, PSS will be there, SSS will be there. So considering those things or putting those things out of this particular picture, this is how the code will be done for our actual. So this table will actually give you how much code rate we do, how much bits in the RE we are using it for actual data. Okay, so you can see here 0.9 because totally we have 8 bits. 64 QAM means 6 bits. You can see 0.8 and 5 here. 16 QAM means 4 bits. And QPSK will be 2 bits.
So just can you please describe the code rate once again? What it actually means?
Okay, I'll just explain it once again. See, let's take this example. Okay, let's take this example. QPSK, how many bits are there? 2 bits. In 2 bits, okay, in 2 bits, 0.07 bits will be used for coding. And 0.15 bits will be used for actual. So if you are getting little complex with the numbers, I'll come to little more simpler number here.
That means code rate actually overhead.
Sorry?
Code rate is like overhead.
Yes, it's an overhead information. That's what I told you. That coding, see, I will take, let's say, I'm not able to write it. 1 minute. Okay. See, let's say the actual data, and let's say this is the coded bit I use for, let's say, okay. So you can see the actual data is more, coded bits are less. Let's say out of 100, 75 bits are used for data, 25 bits are used for code.
Yes.
Okay. Let's take one more instance. Let's say I will use 25 bits for data, 75 bits for code. Okay. Now, what does this mean? In this, my data rate will reduce, correct? And this, in this, my data rate will increase. Now, where do I use this? It's very simple. In eNote B, let's say the UE tells my RF conditions are poor. My RF conditions are poor. It will obviously go with this coded version. If another UE here tells my RF conditions are good, let's say my CQI value is, let's say, 9. So what it will do? It might do this sort of coded version. So coded bits, how much I have to use data, how much I have to, all this will be defined in CQI. Just to make you understand, I have taken a simple number, wherein if you go with more coded bits, it will have an impact on your throughput in your actual.
What I understand that if the frequency quality, everything is good, then they can provide the increase his QAM 64 up to 64.
See, whether it is 64 QAM or this, it can be 64 QAM also. See, possibility is that both can be 64 QAM, okay, but the coded bits can vary inside 64 QAM. See, that's why they have given you this choice, right? Inside 64 QAM, there are so many options given under 64 QAM because all this will have 6 bits only. There is no difference in the only thing is the coded bits and the actual bits are changing. You can see here. So always remember this. So if I can fix the modulation scheme, the coding scheme inside that modulation scheme can vary based on the CQI value or basically based on the RF conditions.
From this sheet, you can see that their higher QAM is code.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, clear.
You got it, right?
Yes.
So that's what I mentioned about modulation and coding scheme with respect to CQI value. Please remember this. Whenever we are talking about CQI value, the CQI value is provided by the UE to the eNote B. And eNote B will take this value in the scheduler to schedule the next 1 millisecond based on this CQI value. Good. Okay. Just before I forget, there were 2 more parameters also which will be sent along with CQI. Maybe it might not be so useful in our course, but usually, typically, why we use this is indicator is telling this UE supports how many antennas. See, eNote B will typically have 4 antennas in LTE, right? LTE maximum it will support is 4. LTE advanced it will support 8 cross 8. LTE supports 4 cross 4. Okay. In uplink also, some UEs support 2 cross 2. So how will the mobile understand which or how many antennas it will support? That is told by WAN. So if I say rank indicator 1, maybe it will support only one antenna. If I say rank indicator 2, it will support two antennas. Okay. And PMI means pre-coding matrix indicator. For each and we need to have some matrix which are there inside inbuilt matrices. So those indices are also being sort of indicated by you. So it's related to your rank indicator only. Inside rank indicator, there are multiple matrices which are available, which is coding matrix indicator. So that is also sort of mentioned by UE while sending the CQI value. So while sending the CQI value, it will also send these two along with this. Okay. Okay. So let's move to the next important topic, MIMO, multiple input, multiple output. I think most of you would have already got familiarized with what is this. I'll have one example I'll give you with respect to the Geo network. I'm not sure in BSNL what sort of configuration they're using. So for 2300 band is using 4 antenna configuration. We call it as 4 cross 4. 4 means 4 transmission, 4 reception. Okay, let's this example so that we can understand. Now antenna means earlier we had only single antenna at the transmitter and single antenna at the receiver. So this is UE side, this is E node B side. So this is at the E node B side and UE side. Now if single antenna at the transmitter and single antenna as receiver, this is called as CISO, single input, single output. Okay. Now we have multiple antenna or multiple transmitters. That's why it is called MIMO or MIMO. Both are the same. So CISO means single input, single output. Right? MIMO means multiple input, multiple output. Now, let's say there are 4 antennas here. So let's take this example. I have 4 antennas here at the transmitter, that is an input. What about at the mobile end? Typically, we don't see sort of any mobile having 4 antennas. Typically, it will be only 1 antenna, or maximum it might be 2 antennas. So I'll first stick to 1 antenna. So what does the mobile do? What does the mobile do? Typically, it will send something called rank indicator. Now the E node B understands that this particular mobile supports only 1 antenna. Now, what if I want to send these antenna, this data rate in terms of to the mobile? What happens is, let's say I send, A data here. I have an authority to send a different data here, different data here, and different data here. That means whenever we have 4 cross 4 antenna or 4 transmitters, I can increase the throughput. If I have 20 megahertz as my bandwidth, always look at modest scheme, and we saw that okay, 64com gives you a data rate of 120 Mbps. Right? So this gave a spectral efficiency of 6 bits per second per hertz. Right? Now, if I have MIMO configuration, again it can increase up to 4 because 4 transmitters are there. So this will be again more. So my actual data rate becomes 480 Mbps, and my spectral efficiency will be how much? 20 bits per second. So you can clearly see, if we increase the number of antennas in our system, our spectral efficiency will also increase. Okay? So this is called as cross 4 antenna. That means antenna, if we start increasing the number of antennas, our antenna will also have throughput. But the condition here is, if we are having 4 antennas at the transmitter side, we also have equal number of antennas at the receiver, which is typically not there, because inside UE you typically see only one antenna. So now what do we do? Now if I hope you are getting this point. So now what we are doing is, if we have antennas when compared to TX and RX, the solution is, I'll just erase this and I'll come to it again. So here we have typically 4 antennas at the transmitter end, let's say E node B, and we have a mobile which has only a single antenna. Now what will the E node B do? Let's say it will have a data called A, and it will repeat this data. Why? Because I cannot send unique data, because earlier we had sent unique data here and increase the throughput, right? Now I cannot do this because a mobile will support only single antenna. This is called as 4 cross. So we have single antenna here, we have a mobile here, we have an E node B here. So what happens? The configuration here is 4 cross 1. That means we have 4 transmitters, but only 1 receiver. Okay. So now I am sending A here. I am sending the same data, repeating it here. So now the benefit having MIMO is not increasing the throughput. It will not increase the throughput, but will give me another gain, that as diversity gain. More so, it is called as transmit diversity gain. What does this mean? If I cannot decode this, I have 3 other decoding the data, because E node B has repeated this data thrice in 3 different antennas. So MIMO will always not increase the throughput. It will increase the throughput only if we have equal number of antennas at the transmitter and the receiver. If we have unequal number of antennas, it will not be giving you a throughput, higher throughput. It will give you another sort of gain, which is called as diversity. And this sort of configuration is called as MISO, multiple input, single output. There is one more way of looking at no antenna. You can see here, this is what we tried in 2G. This is what we tried in 2G. Typically in 3G also we had the same thing. In 4G we have this sort of configuration also, where E node B might antennas, UE will have only one antenna. In this situation, all this as MISO. There is one more situation when UE is uploading its data. Right? E node B might have 2 antennas. That is, receiver will having 2 antennas, transmitter will have 1 antenna. This is called as single input, multiple output. And the MIMO is, if we have equal number of antennas in the transmitter, equal number of antennas in the receiver, this is called as MIMO. So in MIMO, these are the different variants what we got. So typically we have MISO, we also have the variant called MISO, CMO, and we also have MIMO. Okay. Remember this is very important. Always, maybe people might think that MIMO will increase your data rate. That's not true. MIMO will increase the throughput only if you have equal number of antennas at the transmitter, equal number of antennas at the receiver. You can increase the throughput. And whenever you are increasing, whenever we have equal number the transmitter and receiver, we get a gain, and that gain is called as multiplexing gain. Multiplexing gain means what? It is increasing your overall throughput of the network. Okay. Let's say if I don't have equal number of antennas, if I don't have equal number of antennas, let's say two antennas are here at the transmitter. Let's say E node B has two antennas and UE has one antenna. This what we call that.
लग जाना पता कौस मारने भी जाता
So what do we call this as? Multiple input, single output. So what do? We transmit the same to one single mobile, and we get, which we call it as diversity gain. Diversity gain means what? Basically, we are repeating the data. So mobile has two chances of decoding the data. So this diversity gain we call it as transmit diversity, because from the transmitter side we are doing the gain. Let's say
in case of this multiple input, okay, on my mode. So in this, since we have got multiple PX, so there has to be frequency separation between the transmitter and antennas, right?
See those points. See, I got your point, but those are all using same 20 megahertz only. See, it is not having different.
The band might be same, but at that time, suppose I've got 4 data streams. Okay, so at a time, all these 4 TX antennas cannot be having the same frequency, otherwise they will interfere, right?
You are saying that this is using 300, this is using some other frequency. That's what you mean?
It might be within the 20 megahertz only, suppose. Okay. But
okay,
the frequency, absolute frequency should be different. Otherwise, then how? Otherwise, one will interrupt.
See,
otherwise at the receiver, how it will decode that which one is intended for which?
Okay, I got your point. See, basically at a logical level, it is connected to a single unit here. Okay, it is having 300 band has got this 4 antennas. Typically, we are using this. Here we have some DSP processors which processes. See, antenna is just a passive device, right? Antenna will just radiate based on whatever this DSP processor guides. So basically this 20 megahertz is spread across these 4, and we are not doing some different frequency. The frequency remains same. There is no sort of interference, because the interference only comes if they are using different frequencies. The same frequency will not create any sort of interference, and the processing of all these antennas is done by the same processor itself. Physically it looks different, but logically all are being processed by the same processor. And this 20 megahertz totally will give you 4 times extra data rate when compared to a single antenna.
ऊपर बंदा को टेढ़ा ले ना ने कोड़ा
Hello.
सैंडविच में तो बतेरा.
You are getting my point here. Please remember this.
But I'm not entirely convinced. If transmit is same, okay, you can microwave also. If you have got 2 antennas and they have the same frequency, they will interrupt. So we have got frequency diversity, we have got diversity over space diversity. Okay, so antenna is same only. I think there must be some underlying principle, okay, where there is some separation or some working or something.
That separation is already there. See, inside the antenna, we have these antenna elements which are separated with 45 degree alignment. So this has been done.
Okay. I got it.
See, this separation is already there.
No. I got it.
Okay.
I got it. Now, see. Now, since you are telling this, like, see, now, basically, okay.
I just finished. These are called antenna elements which are having a 45 degree polarization. So this will give you a
yeah. So this separation is in the polarization, right?
Yes.
So in that case, we can. In that case, we can have the same figures. Okay.
Yes. You're getting my point now. I thought we are talking about these things. If you look at the physical structure of an antenna, inside the antenna, we have these antenna elements. Typically, these antenna elements will be having a 45 degree polarization, which will take care of this interference management. Okay. So let me come back to whatever we discussed. So whenever we have equal number of antennas, okay, whenever we have equal number of transmitter and receiver, it will increase my throughput, and we call it as multiplexing. Okay, multiplexing gain. So MIMO multiplexing gain is only when we have equal number of antennas. Let's say if I don't have equal number of antennas, let's say transmit this and receiver are single. This is called as what? This is called as diversity gain. Diversity gain. And typically this is called as transmit diversity gain. Let the other way around, wherein the mobile is transmitting and E node B is receiving now. Now E node B has got two different paths to collect this particular. This is called as receive diversity gain. Typically you might have seen this. This was already used in 2G also. If you had worked in 2G antenna installation, you would have seen that there was a separate antenna for fixed, another antenna for div. It was called div antenna. So basically, also, which used to capture the diversity gain, and it will not increase your throughput. There is no change in the throughput, but it will increase your signal quality. So this is very important. It will improve your signal quality. So MIMO typically has two gains. So typically has two gains. One is called multiplexing gain. Multiplexing gain will always increase your throughput or your peak data rate. And one more gain is called diversity gain. Which will not increase your throughput, but will increase your signal quality. So remember this, always when I say MIMO, there should be an underlying condition. It will not always increase your throughput. The condition is if equal number of antennas are there, it will give a multiple gain, which will increase the throughput. If there are unequal number of antennas, it can be used diversity purpose, and it will have an improvement on your signal quality. And you can see the different sort of antenna configuration which we discussed. Initially, we started with something called CISO. The MISO, CMO are the one which is giving you diversity gain, and MIMO are the one which is giving you the multiplexing. So as you can see here, the advantages of MIMO, which can provide two gains. One is spatial multiplexing gain, which can improve your maximum transmission rate. Use it for scattering, fading to your advantage. Diversity gain, it will minimize the packet error, go for reliability and quality of service, and it will also counter something called fading in wireless channel. Okay, so just want to reiterate. Let's say I took an example of 20 megahertz if
मंगे
we
ले
go
ले वो
with
मंगे
64
बतेरी
QAM modulation,
मंगे बतेरी आई है
if we go with let's say
जल्दी कर
4 cross 4 MIMO, keeping condition that both the sets are 4, so my actual throughput will be 120 Mbps into 4, so it is 480 Mbps. So MIMO will have a significant improve on your from 6 as your spectral efficiency, it will directly jump to 24. Okay, the last part of our session is more on the mathematics side, but it will sort of invoke your thought process. Basically, checking the data rate calculation. I think most of you would have already got this calculation, but still, just to sort of give you a mathematical feel to whatever we discussed so far, so that you get these numbers, how it has been sort of planned. We will just discuss this. So these are sort of things which we already know, right? So one radio frame, 2 times slot, 0.5 millislot is the subframe duration. In that 2 slots are there. We are taking an assumption as 7 modulation simple because we are taking it as normal cyclic prefix, and we are assuming that we will have 6 bits as our modulation scheme. Now let's look at the data rate calculation. Now we have taken an example of 20 megahertz 100 resource block. How do we calculate? 100 resource block into 12 subcarriers into 2 slots into 7 modulation into 6 bits. Why we have done this? Very simple. At each element, so you can see here resource element, we have 12 such subcarriers, correct? 7 OFDM symbols, but we calculated for 14 OFDM symbols. That's why instead of plus 7 into 2, you can directly plus 12 into 14. That's also possible. 100 are total resource block for 20 megahertz. So 100 into 12 into 14 into each resource element will have a modulation scheme of 64 QAM. So how much is it? 6. So if you multiply that you get a data rate as 100 megabits per second. Okay, 100 megabits per second. So how do you get this? This is the bits per millisecond, because the TTA duration in LTE is 1 millisecond. So if you divide this with 1 millisecond, you get how much? 100 megabits per second. Okay. Now what they have done another assumption is, if you go with 4 cross 4 calculation, multiply it with 4 and you get 403 Mbps. Now remember this, we are using a 2 by 4. What does this mean? For every 3 bits of data, 1 extra bit I am adding it as coding bit. So for 3 by 4, total 4 bits. Out of this, 3 for data, 1 for 4. So that's why 0.75, we multiply it with 0.75. So you get, because 0.25 is already gone for coding. So 0.75 is your 75 into 403 bits, you get 3 Mbps. This is the data rate you get with all these. So this is how we came to a conclusion that LTE gives you a data rate of 300 Mbps if you get all these conditions satisfied. And mind you, this is for only one UE. So we are taking it as one UE. In reality, you will never get 300 Mbps, right? Whenever you do a speed test, you will not get 300 Mbps. Typically, you get somewhere around that. Let's say you do a speed test, you get 2 Mbps or 5 Mbps, or maximum somewhere around 10 Mbps. More than that, also we have achieved it. I'm just typically looking at the average rate what you get in your network, right? Now, this is an exercise for you now, so that we get these things properly. So let's look at first calculation. I hope you start taking your pen and paper and start calculating, or you can, if you are good in mathematics, I think you can calculate directly. Can you tell me the answer for this? Or can you tell me the steps how we do this? See, let's look at the queue from the previous slide. 100 resource blocks. So he has taken 100 resource block here. How many resource blocks should I take here for 5 megahertz?
23.
Sorry, please come again.
25.
25? Yes, it is 25. 25 resource block into how much is that? What is the next step? 12. Okay, next 12 into 4. Okay, 12 into 3. Next into modulation scheme. What is the modulation? So how much do you get this? 25 into 12. Huh?
12 into 14.
So 1200. Why 1200? Because we have taken resource block. If we had not taken resource block, we should have taken.
No. I just multiplied first 2 and 4.
Okay. What is the answer for this?
16,800.
16,800.
60,800.
16800.
16800. Correct? 16800. Now this is the number of bits per second. Now we have to calculate it for millisecond. So how much do you get? 16.8. 168. Milli goes 1000. No, it is 16.8, right? Because milli means it will come on top. So if I consider 10 power 3, 10 power minus 3 and 10 power 3, 16.8. Yeah, so 16.8 Mbps is the data rate. But we have not considered one more input.
14.
No, first we'll take this minor. I'll come to coding also. So 16, let's keep it simplified as 16 Mbps. 16 into 2, how much do you get? 32 Mbps is your actual data rate. Multiply it with half. Why? Because we are using half channel code. So your actual data rate will be only 16 Mbps. You're getting my point? Any doubt? Similar to that, let's calculate this if there are more doubts. Similar, what do you do this for 10? Is it 75? It's 50, not 75. Correct? Because 75 is for 15 megahertz. So multiply it with 12, multiply it with 14, multiply it with 4, sorry, not 4, how much is it? 2. Why 2? Because here the condition is QPSK. So tell me how much is it?
Hmm, 16,800 bits per second.
Okay, so you get the same number here also. So 16,800. Okay. So again, for millisecond, how much do you get? 16.8
16.8.
Okay. Now what we have to do? We have to multiply it with 4. So 60 to 4, 64 Mbps. That is the actual
into 3 by 4.
Yeah, into 3 by 4. So if you do something like 0.75, how much do you get?
48.
So 48 Mbps is my actual throughput for this particular input. This is how we can calculate the data rate. Instead of putting all these things, you can also put it in terms of subcarriers also. For example, 25, you can put it as, I think it is 300 or, yeah, 300. Right? So 3 and here you can put it as 600. So that can also be done. But this is the easier way of calculation because this will typically give you a better steps when compared to putting it across in the subcategories. Okay, so I hope you got some familiarization with respect to data rate. This is how we calculate the data rate with respect to various sort of bandwidth. So if you remember in our yesterday's discussion also, we had mentioned what are the factors which are affecting your throughput. Obviously, bandwidth will have an impact on your throughput, right? Have an impact on your throughput. It will coding rate will have an impact on your throughput. Modulation scheme will have an impact on your throughput. MIMO will obviously impact your throughput. If your UE category is there, that will also impact your throughput. What sort of service, that means quality of service, that will also have an impact on throughput. TDD or FDD, this will also have an impact on your throughput. Now you can see that because this has special subframe, this will have a reduction in data rate. This doesn't have all these things. So all these factors are the one which are not considered these factors, but what are the main important factors we have considered, and we have given you some examples so that you can have some sort of an idea how the data rate calculation happens in LTE.
I got supplies.
So quickly summarizing whatever we discussed so far, in fact, we looked at FDD and TDD, their frame duration, what are the differences, how the PSS and SSS and TBCH placement has been done in both the configurations. We specifically looked at TDD LTE configuration, and we also looked at special subframe. TDD configuration as 0 to 6, totally 7 configurations. Subframe has 0 to 8, totally 9 configurations. Data rate calculation we looked at with various possibilities. We looked at what is CQI and what are its implications in the data rate. We looked at various modulation and coding schemes in LTE. We also looked at MIMO, what are the different variants in MIMO. For example, what is CMO, what is MISO, what is MIMO with respect, or what is CISO. And also we looked at with respect to MIMO, it always doesn't improve your throughput. We also have something called diversity gain, which will increase your signal quality. And we have multiplexing gain, which will improve your actual throughput. Okay, so we have finished with summary. Any doubts before we get into the quiz?
The multiplexing gain we are achieving through the DSP which is sitting in RRH, is it? The DSP is sitting in RRH?
Yes, because antenna is a passive device, right? So antenna is only having those antenna elements which transmits based on whatever inputs is given by the DSP processor inside the RRH. Basically, we call it as multiplexing codes. So to make it simple, it is basically having a DSP processor which takes care of all this multiplexing, or let's say diversity, everything. Any other doubts? Can we move to quiz? Okay. So let's move to quiz. Let's look at the first question. What is it? Okay, CQI range in LTE is from
0 to 9.
No, 0 to 9 is about special subframe, right? 0 to 8, totally 9.
5 or 2.
0 to 6. 0 to 6. Okay, I'll come to the answer. It is 1 to 1 to 15. So if you look at, I'll just go back. You can see here the CQI table. It starts from 1, goes up to 15. So the CQI range in LTE is from 1 to 15. Okay. So why I put this question purposely, because usually you see this parameter inside your let's say drive test, or whenever you are looking at some of the call log files, you will look at the CQI value. So you can make a sort of note with respect to this, that each and every sort of value will have a corresponding modulation and coding scheme. Okay, the next question. Let's go to the next question. The special subframe should come after uplink to downlink transit.
Watch out.
Is it true or false?
It's false.
False.
Very good.
False.
Very good.
False.
So it has to be from downlink to uplink.
Downlink to uplink.
So whenever there is a downlink to uplink transition, there should always be precedence of a special subframe. What are the advantages of MIMO antenna? So what gain do we get?
Higher data rate.
Multiplexing PSK.
Yes,
Diversity gain and multiplexing.
excellent. So basically, we are looking at two gains in MIMO. MIMO will have multiplexing gain and also the diversity. Next. So the PSS and SSS position in FDD and TDD frame is same. Is it true or false?
False.
Very good. So it's false. Okay. So let me move to the next question. The total uplink and downlink configuration available in TD-LTE is how much is it?
That is 0 to 6. That is 0 to 6.
Excellent. So totally 7, 0 to 6. So I hope it was useful. Any doubts you have got, so that before we sign off, we can just address that and then we move. We have some time. Okay, if there are no doubts, thank you for your patient listening. So we'll meet tomorrow at the same time. Thank you. Have a great night. Good night.
Good night.
Thanks.
Thank you, Vignesh.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Vignesh.